Director and CEO, Bank of Baroda. Our moderator for today's session is Mr. N. Srinivasan. We are grateful to the speakers for agreeing our request to join this discussion. I'm positive that we'll be able to take away some concrete forward-looking recommendations for action. Welcome again, and I now hand over the session to Mr. Srinivasan to initiate the conversation.
Thank you, Kirti, and again, welcome back to all the participants. It's a privilege to be moderating a panel consisting of such experienced and expert bankers of the past and the present, with their wide experience in financing and more in agricultural financing. We expect to get rich insights on where we are and how we move forward. Without much ado, we know where agricultural finance is, which I already talked about in a presentation a short time back. With all that's there, looking at the different parts of the financing piece in agriculture, I have structured the session in short question answers from select what we call panelists out here to make it conversational. I would highly encourage the audience to send in any questions that they might have so that we can weave that into our discussions. The entire effort will be to make this entire panel discussion into a conversational kind of a tone. None of us are going to have lectures from any podium or not having any PowerPoint presentation. I think we are done with that about 10 minutes back. I think to begin with, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to spend some 4 to 5 minutes on whether agricultural finance has changed in any way over the last about 5 years. And if it has changed, how? Is it for the good or better of the sector? And how do they look at it? Maybe I will start this with Ms. Manju Agarwal to set the ball rolling. Then I will go around.
Thank you very much, Mr. Srinivasan. I have been looking at your presentation that you made a while ago, and I was also listening to the conversation that was done by Mr. Dalbai, and I found it very informative. And you're responding to your specific question whether agriculture finance has changed over the last 5 years. My answer will be no and yes. So at the macro level, it has changed, but it has not changed for the good. You have yourself shown in your presentation that agri credit as a percentage of agri GDP has been declining over the last 5 years. Capital formation as a percentage of agri output has been declining. Share of investment credit in total bank credit has been declining. So far, for the changes that have come in, which actually are not good for the sector per se. At the micro level, if you look at, I would say there are hardly any changes. We still do the same products. We follow the same processes in assessment and delivery, and the same processes for recovery. Most of the loans are by way of KCCs, a product which has become very popular, but I would say does not take care of all the credit requirements of farmers as of date. And even this KCC, not all farmers have access to the KCC product. Almost 35% to 40% crop loans are still outside of it, though KCC has, as we are saying, has lost much of its relevance in today's time. And to add salt to injury, not all farmers have access to institutional credit. We had been looking at your presentation and the earlier deliberations also, almost 35% farmers still resort to their old traditional channels for availing credit requirements. Very little work has been done by the stakeholders to look for new products, to find products which are customer specific, which could be cluster specific, which could be area specific. Very little work has been done to assess the credit requirements in a different way now that we are talking of technology and digital India. Very little work to assess the credit requirements of farmers digitally. In fact, most of the data is not available in a digital form, though we've been talking about digitizing land records. The GEM Trinity also they talked about. and we have opened so many bank accounts. Most of the farmers are expected to be on smartphones, mobile penetration we talk about. The bank accounts are linked to Aadhaar. But Gem Trinity probably stops here. The farmers are not spending money through mobile. So the digital footprints are not available. All the DBT money which goes into these accounts gets withdrawn in cash in one single day. And there are no digital footprints on the farmer's spend. So actually banks are not left with any digital transaction history which they can look at and decide on the credit worthiness of these farmers and see how they can be connected and credit linked. Very little work has been done to make agriculture sustainable and environment friendly. We have been going for monocropping. We saw how agriculture in South is still progressive, but in North India it is monocropping paddy wheat. And why paddy wheat? Because your marketing is assured, government will procure at MSP, and even though it may not be useful for the country per se, even though these crops are available at much lower rates in international market, but we continue growing the same crops because you are able to sell, your marketing is assured. So very little work has been done how we can make marketing more vibrant, such as farmers take recourse to different crops. Could be horticulture, could be pisciculture, could be aquaculture. So very little work has been done, and I'm talking of all the stakeholders, including banks. Very little work has been done for creating and financing value chains on the line of dairy finance. We have seen how dairy has become a self-sustainable industry and how people are taking benefit out of it. But other than dairy, I'm not able to find any other value chain financing in agriculture. Now, we have been talking about agriculture output and its bank's credit as a percentage of this output, but there is still some information which is more skewed. If you look at the contribution of allied agriculture activity to agriculture, it's almost 40%. But the flow of credit to this particular field is just about 9%. And this is one area where if credit is made available, it will ensure a regular revenue stream for the farmers. And the kind of stress that we talk about in agriculture, crop failures, all those problems are not there in this particular allied activity. But very little financing is going there. There's one more activity which is skewed. 85% farmers are small and marginal, and they handle about 47% of the total cropped area or the operational land holdings. But the share of credit to this particular sector is just about 9% of total agriculture. So whatever support that we talk about, that the government is giving by way of interest subsidy, by way of other input subsidy, by way of maybe MSP, I don't think this particular sector who needed the most, they are getting the benefit. It is somebody else who is getting. And very little work has been done to set this problem, to fix this problem, I would say. And last but not the least, though I am a banker, the number of rural branches, when we talk about outreach, the number of rural branches are declining. They may not be declining in absolute numbers, but number of branches, rural branches, a percentage of total branches is declining, and they are being replaced by business correspondent. So business correspondent is a good concept. But business correspondent cannot replace a rural branch actually. And now these branches are, first, the numbers is going down. Second, they're not adequately staffed. You go to any rural branch, you can look at the staff strength available. Third is, they are too much bogged down with the liability products. Yeah. Because banks have opened accounts for each and every individual and households, and government is slowly and gradually putting money into these accounts under various schemes, Kisan Samman Nidhi or some Vidva pension, some maternity pension, scholarship, blah, 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 LPG subsidy, all kind of subsidy. So these branches are too much bogged down to handle these liability products. So where is the time to look at credit? To look at, and if you look at the average number of loan accounts that a single rural branch services, I don't think it is humanly possible for them to manage those kind of accounts. So when you cannot even manage the workload or the pressure, where is the time for the poor man to innovate or to do a field survey or to be connected with the farmer to see whether he really needs funds, where is the funding required? He is somehow trying to make the both hands meet. So we need to look at, and we need to have some financial sector specialists, the agri sector specialists in the banks. There was a time we used to recruit agriculture assistant, not anymore. We have the same general cadre.
Yeah, so, ma'am. There are some of these issues. Maybe in a second round we will get back to. I think it's a very comprehensive set of issues that you are talking about in describing the current state and whether you have seen any change. Now I would shift to Mr. Jayakumar. Having been there at the helm of affairs in Bank of Baroda and coming from a very different banking background. Mr. Jayakumar, how do you see whether agricultural finance has seen significant changes? And if there are changes, then how do you see them? Are they positive, negative? Yeah.
So the way I would compare the scenario is like this. It seems to be we are in a plane. The plane is the boarding gate, but the expectation is that it will be in cruise mode. So I guess given a certain amount of time, surely from the boarding gate to the cruise mode should be possible. First, let's look at farm credit itself. 2015-2020 data shows 8 trillion rupees of financing. Circa 2021, 13 trillion. Average growth rates 15% CAGR, multiple times of the growth in the underlying GDP. So I would assume some of the gaps that are there in terms of access to non-institutional credit must have in some way been covered to give meaning to these numbers. On the other hand, we're also dealing with this issue, which is the gross NPA is extremely high, 8 to 10%. And if you look at the gross NPA, it is particularly elevated in states where there has been a farm waiver. Last week, I was in Chennai speaking to FPOs, and the first thing they told me is, don't lend any money now. We are expecting farm waiver to be announced in this election. Therefore, you don't get involved right now. You'll only lose money. So we need to think about that, right? Farm waiver and its implication with respect to gross NPA, we need to consider. The third thing I would like to say is that there has been a tremendous progress in the payment system. The Aadhaar card, the Jan Dhan, the various direct benefit transfer, UPI. The fact that 14.5 crore customers could get money, farmers could get money practically at the push of a button. While working in Bank of Baroda, I learned this term saturated marketing first time, which essentially is a way of saying there's 100% penetration on Jan Dhan and the other stacks covering Bima Yojana, pension program, etc. So these are certainly railroads that have been built. And surely, as time goes by, we should be able to use the railroads more effectively. Now, getting down to a little bit more theoretical, you have the Gulati and Fang report, the dragon and the elephant, and the learnings from agricultural and rural reform. And this is important to discuss. China has 103 million hectares of arable land. India has 141 million hectares of arable land. China's output is 1.2 trillion. Our output is 400 billion. So when we start thinking about it, we say, yes, there is a low capital formation in the agricultural sector. I have tried to increase the capital formation in the agricultural sector. I will give you an example and why I could not do it. In micro irrigation, if you were to look at it, Indian coverage is 15%, China's coverage is 50%. I went to Ganganagar, which is one of the better districts. And theoretically, if you brought in micro irrigation over there, a lot more people further down the chain would get water. But there is a scheme with a 90% subsidy with respect to micro irrigation. Now, the absolute amount of money available under that micro irrigation program, subsidy is 1,000 crores, but everybody thinks he will get it. As a consequence, it's been impossible to convince people to make investment in micro irrigation to improve the productivity because there is a subsidy sitting over there. I spoke to these people in Chennai and told them, let us put solar water pump. They said, water is free, power is free, so why should we do it? So there you are with 90% subsidy, free power, free water. All of that essentially are inhibitors to investment in investment credit. And these things need to change. So let's look at the positive sides. the negative sides we've discussed. We are transitioning to a universal income system, which means all these subsidies will get aggregated and will be given in the form of one credit. That would give a greater degree of opportunity for farmers to accept modern technology, because they will be seeing what they are paying for. They'll be paying for what they're using. And I would think that kind of a change, if it is earlier brought, would be a bit of a silver lining into this whole process. Now, speaking to the new set of reforms with respect to FPOs and APMC, and also the development of ENAM, surely it should be possible to have the output side of the equation improved. The second inhibitor in terms of farm acceptance of investment in farm investment, one of the things that the farmers kept saying is that whatever output we are getting, we're not getting fair prices. We surely can make investment and we can grow 3 times more, 4 times more. Who is going to take the output? And would not the increase in the output itself result in further fall in the price? And so then you get back to this position that we need to address this issue of demand side, of excessive supply side, through a number of initiatives, food processing, agro industries, etc. But you also need to see an increase in the GDP of the people and increase in the consumption requirement of our people, so that these outputs can be absorbed. And we also need to see substantial uptake in the export arrangements that are there. But on all of these things, I see, movements happening. So I would therefore say to you that there are enough number of silver linings on this whole space that should help us to look at future and say that should be better. That's really how I would put it. That's how I really would put it. I would think we need to move to a new architecture for agricultural credit. That new architecture is not going to be made by asking bank officers to work harder. It isn't going to be that. That's not the solution at all. The new architecture would simply involve the farmer going around the field of his farm, the GPS coordinates being taken, the lat long being taken, interacted with a bunch of data to give the farmer an SOP as well as a product that he should cultivate. And a surveillance system that is based a combination of space and kind of sensor technology that will enable appropriate intervention. I would very clearly see there would be very little individual action with respect to water and fertigation. The whole process would get automated. So yes, we need to improve farm credit, we need to improve farm output, but a lot of things are going to be around how quickly and easily we adapt to technology. The technology is there, and all data shows that the payback of this technology is good, provided we're able to deal with the output side of the equation in terms of being able to absorb the commodity that is getting produced. So in conclusion, I see forward movement. I see tomorrow being very different, but I do see that we have to do a lot of work between now and tomorrow to make this kind of a dream that we have into a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jayakumar. There's both the positive, the negative and the positive, and the emphasis on the positive as to the future direction. Mr. Krishna Rao, you are an operating banker. So how do you see the changes, if any, in agricultural finance?
Yes, sir. I really endorse the views of both the MD, DMDs, MD of Bank of Baroda and DMD of earlier State Bank of India. They talked about the macro picture and macro. Now I am confining to the operational issue, how State Bank of India for the last 2 years has taken the measures to enhance the credit flow to the outreach. One of the important step they have taken is digitization of processes. Okay. Digitization. We have already digitized the one important product, that is KCC under UNO platform. The UNO Krushi app. Under the UNO Krushi app, farmer can apply his review or renewal sitting in the house with 2 or 3 clicks. This is very, very safe, simple and secure. He can do. He need not submit any physical form. He need not come to the branch. With he can download the app and submit the application, and everything, the process part and everything will be done by the system automation. So we have taken this measure, and we are going to connect to so many farmers. As on today, we have 80 lakh farmers. We have extended under KCC. We are this app has been launched in the month of August. We already covered 2.8 lakh farmers. They are able to process their loans through this. This is both convenient to the bank, convenient to the farmer. That digitization, not only KCC, we are digitizing for tractor loans, we are digitizing the dairy loans, we are digitizing all loans. All loans are available on UNO platform, and the farmers can access the loan products. They can apply it, and everybody will, the process part. Our aim is to reach more to the unreached areas, unbanked areas. So we have gone to the digitization. The second step we are going to have is collaboration with fintech companies and startups. We have already identified some fintech companies. We are in the process of having a partnership and collaborations with them. With that latest technology of artificial intelligence, blockchain, big data analytics, machine IoT, we are able to leverage the market linkages and other things to both the benefit to the borrower and the bank in a big way. The third one, the strategy what State Bank of India has taken is they have rolled out one new vertical that is called FIMM. FI means financial inclusion, MM means micro market. This is headed by a very senior officer, Deputy Managing Director, and the officer also has been shifted from Mumbai to Delhi to have a coordination with all stakeholders. And this office is focusing on deepening financial inclusion, execution, delivery, coordination, and this is nothing but a specialized outfit for the delivery of agri credit along with the BC channel. The third initiative what we have taken is we have established processing centers, hub and spoke model. For 10 to 15 branches, we have opened one processing center. That processing center is called RACC, Retail Assets Credit Center. There they do end-to-end. That is pre-sanction, processing, then post-sanction to support the rural branches. Thereby, the tax can be maintained. And another area where we have done good job is partnership with NBFC, that is co-lending model. Under co-lending model, we have already partnered with Paisalo. We are doing good work in this, and we have already identified another 7 NBFC ND companies. We are going to have a tie-up with them to reach out to the unreached areas, credit deficit areas. Another area where I want to bring to the August House to examine is regarding the tenant farmers. Now the tenant farmers constitute 50 to 60% of the total farming community. Andhra Pradesh has a lead. Am I audible, sir? Andhra Pradesh has taken the lead of providing LED. It is not bulb. It is a loan eligibility cards. LEC, loan eligibility cards. These loan eligibility cards are given with the government that is backup to the eligible farmers, and the farmers are eligible for the credit. They are eligible for the input subsidy. They are eligible for crop damages. This kind of initiative, if it is replicated across the India, so much of farm credit will go to the real beneficiaries, so that the institutional informal, now they are taking the loan from the informal channel. Now they can be a formal channel if they are taking. Another initiative what I am requesting to the August House to consider is credit guarantee just on the lines of Mudra. Mudra is taking care of the non-land based schemes. Why not they include in land based schemes also, so that the farmers will get a comfort to lend this all these farmers, because the NPA level political risk is high in the agri finance. It will take care of for them to reduce the credit cost. In a nutshell, I am talking about the initiative taken by State Bank of India for enhancing the institutional credit at affordable interest rate. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krishna Rao, for a good description of what's changing in a fairly large bank, which is probably the banking sector leader. I will now turn to Mr. Shaji, who has been a retail banker and also who has been at the helm of affairs of a bank which is rural focused, now at the head of a policy bank. So Shaji, when you are dealing with that, one of the things that has changed is about use of BCs in banking. There is a question which has come from the audience, which is also asking whether the BC model is a good solution to branch banking, especially in agricultural finance. So towards the end of what you have got to say on changes in agricultural finance, if you could cover this additionally, we would be very thankful. Yeah.
So the question asked was how the agri finance has changed during the last 5 years.
Yes.
In terms of quantum, already your presentation has covered that it has increased. Mr. Jaykumarji also has told about that. But then we have to analyze it a little further. That there was a mention that the loan amount, quantum-wise, above 10 crore loans are higher. So that has dragged actually the figures higher. With that data, when you analyze it along with the number of small farm and marginal farmers which are still unbanked, and also with the data that the cooperative banks share, even though their quantum is stagnant, their share has come down. So all these points out to the fact that the quantum of agriculture finance is moving towards large farmers, which is a trend which is evident in the last 5 years. And why the share of cooperatives have come down, that also is a matter to be examined, because this was a time when PM Kisan was introduced, and PM Kisan needed Aadhaar enabled account, which many of these cooperatives were not having. Why I'm mentioning about cooperatives is that cooperatives are considered to be close to the farmers, that to small and marginal farmers, and also even sharecroppers or tenant farmers and such other things, which is the area of concern now. So what is happening is that many of the farmers are moving towards public sector banks or maybe banks with Aadhaar enabled accounts. But then those banks are not innovating enough to meet the needs of the farmers, because KCC, as of now, I think it served its purpose. But one thing, if you see the history of KCC was launched at a time when there was no innovation happening at the bank level. So government and NABARD thought about having some innovative product. But that was a customized product for farmers. But that killed innovations. I can say that because at the branch level, people thought it easy to lend to KCC than to other types of loans. So now KCC has served its purpose, and now during this period itself, during the last 5 years, if you see, there was a PSLC, that is Private Sector Lending Certificate, was introduced. That scheme also, what it did was that those institutions which are good in origination of loans, they were incentivized by some sort of fees through selling those PSLCs in the market. So if you see that the quantum of private sector lending certificate, it has gone up, and mostly private sector bankers are having the large quantum. So that itself shows that that is an easier way out for the private sector or private sector banks not to take risks or not to have dirtying their hands in the agri finance, if you can tell like that, because they are not going to the field. So that is one thing. And then the RRBs, the regional rural banks, which are having access agriculture and private sector loans, they are the major players. They are major players as sellers. Whereas public sector banks, to some extent, it is there. If you go by the private sector lending shortfall, there are still major public sector banks having shortfall. That also is alarming. So it's that way, if you analyze, we have to now think about some innovations in PSLC as well. So though there is a categorization of small farmer, marginal farmer, similar to that, why can't we have PSLC for, say, micro irrigation loans? Or wherever we need to focus, wherever the term lending has to happen or capital formation has to happen, how can we incentivize banks to originate those loans? At least those who are very good in origination. And as you said also, this NBFCs who are good in agri-finance and who are now the last mile connectivity, they are actually meeting the last mile connectivity even because they know the area well and they are innovating and they are adequately pricing their products as well. Whereas because of mandated lending or maybe one size fit all approach of large national banks, which itself is killing innovation at the lower level. So that also, the NBFCs also should be brought into this PSLC data. And now one more trend which has happened is the collectivization. Collectivization, it started, of course, with the SHG lending, and as an offshoot, JLG came. But then after that, the FPO financing. So that also started during this last 5 years. The FPO financing, of course, the FPOs, NABARD was leading the role. Actually, they formed around 4,500 FPOs, but then finding that many of the bankers or institutional credit providers are not providing credit. The NABARD, what they did was that they forced their own subsidiary to lend, to show that FPO financing is a profitable venture. In fact, as on date, one of the NABARD subsidiaries is the largest lender to FPOs, having lent to close to 400 FPOs, where no other, even the largest bank of the country, has not lent to such an extent. So now what we have done is that, as a development financial institution, we have developed, as earlier, SHG product, now the FPO product, and we have also crystallized the guidelines for that. And we have, in fact, through RBI, we have now circulated it to banks. But then that doesn't mean that, this is to help the banks. No, what is actually happening is that, as some ex-DMD SBI told, at the field level, the rural branches are overcrowded because of liability products, or even if it is overcrowded, but that doesn't prevent these banks from innovating. So they could have, you asked about BC. So what all things which are routine in nature, with proper risk management practices, it can be hived away to BCs. Thereby, load at the rural branches. Of course, there are HR issues there at the regional or at the rural level. So these things can be overcome by innovation. So use of BC by banking, which actually reduce the drudgery at the field level, but then with proper risk management practices and proper technology. These are very important. So now, whether BCs can do agri lending, yes, if you properly digitize the process, and also with a lot of checks and balances. What Mr. Jaykumarji has told, that geofencing or geotagging of the land holdings, that can be a start. And one more thing. So we have a wealth of data in PM Kisan, which is actually an Aadhaar-enabled account where each and every farmer, that too small and marginal farmers, are identified. So that can be the starting point for the digitization. Now, next stage could be the geofencing, which Jaykumarji has told. This can be added to that. So some innovation has to happen in the PM Kisan data. RBI has come out with the regulatory sandbox where the anonymized data is given to AgTech providers. So similar to that, something should happen now in PM Kisan. And now there was another mention about KCC getting stagnated. So KCC getting stagnated, I take it as a cleansing of KCC data, because there is another observation that in the southern India, the crop loaning is higher, because it is actually a wrong classification of loans. As everybody knows, gold loans are getting classified as KCCs, and so numbers get elevated. And now, because of the interest subvention and getting Aadhaar seeded to every KCC account, the numbers are now actually coming down. But then banks are not actually providing the exact number. That is why it is shown as stagnation. But then there will be some catch up with the fresh loaning. There is a catch up trying with the PM Kisan data as well. Out of 9 crore PM Kisan data, almost 50% only is covered under KCC. That means real small and marginal farmers are not getting KCC. So these are the factors which have come out during the last 5 years, especially during the last 2 years, after the digitization has was given some impetus. So in between that, Government of India's flagship program of doubling income farmers' income is there, and of course, that doubling farmers' income itself, which is now, if it is not supported by investment credit, then it will not be happening. That is one thing. Second thing is that if you see the data, medium-term loans and long-term loans in the gross credit, the proportion has gone up, but then investment credit has come down. So this shows that there is a latent distress in agri, because every medium-term or long-term is restructured loans. Well, in the CBS system, it will be classified as a medium-term or long-term loan. So that is actually taking as when we say that 10% NPA, we have to really add this medium term and long term, whatever incremental growth is there, also to that, because that is the distressed portfolio. So these, if you add that, then distress will again go up. What you said that interest subvention not covering the credit cost, which will be exaggerated to large extent, and it will give a little fear among the bankers. So what, while concluding, what I'll say is that there need to be some innovation, and there are a lot of data getting built up. So on that, we have to now rope in AgTech players and give them the problem, because they are now in a disbursed way. Many of the agri-tech companies are doing a lot of activities, but banks are reluctant to partner, because if banks are looking at easy solution like end-to-end solution from a single entity, because they don't want multiple partnerships, whereas this AgTech are not able to give that end-to-end solutions. So now we have to tell the real problems to AgTech. So we have to engage with rather banks have to engage as a development financial institution. NABARD also will be taking up this. And then make this the whole process, the journey of agriculture credit dispensation, it will smoother. That is what I think we should go ahead with. What Jayakumarji told, that cruise phase of agri credit should happen only when we rope in all these actors, and then from the takeoff point till cruise, we have to now bridge that divide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaji. That's fairly large, overarching view of what the sector is about, going into the micro aspects. And I see that the repetitive themes are, can we use data? Can we bring in tech, especially AgTech? Can we build some partnerships with private sector entities to provide solutions which reduce the drudgery in the last mile? Maybe use of even banking agent. Unless risk management is properly there, don't go. But then with risk management, you can do a lot. And there are some things which have remained the same. They have not changed, but there are changes taking place. I think I will come to the second set of questions. These questions, I think we are, you see, banks are now trying to become more dynamic. They should become more customer responsive. The government is trying to bring in some, reforms in the real sector. They have facilitated entry of private sector, then in marketing, in aggregation for agriculture. Also trying to bring in a more facile contract farming framework. Do you think banks will respond to these kind of changes? In what ways the banks should respond to these changes? So I would start this with Ms. Agarwal first, and then Mr. Shaji. Can you keep the answers fairly short, because we have got another couple of rounds to go? Yeah.
Actually, if you go by the three reforms that the government is trying to bring in, and the country is seeing a lot of resistance, I think that will unshackle the agriculture sector actually, if those reforms can be implemented. Actually, too much of government subsidy, as Mr. Jayakumar had been talking about, too much of subsidy, too much of interest subvention, MSP, it has actually crippled agriculture. The government funding is getting pocketed by a few large players, I would say, and the real people who need it, they are getting deprived of it. So if farm produce can be taken from, say, not to only to the APMC, but to a market where that produce is needed, and a private equity player can come in to take this farm produce from A to B, the realization for the farmer is going to increase. We all know that whatever consumer pays, only a fraction of that goes to the farm. If whatever we as a consumer are paying and the farmer gets that money, probably the whole problem of farm productivity being low and agriculture being unprofitable and farmers not getting enough remuneration, all this problem will go away. The problem is whatever the consumer pays, only a fraction goes to the farmer. And the moment we unshackle this from the APMC and he is given freedom to store it, move it to another place where he can get a better realization, or we give him an opportunity where it can be processed, stored, sold at a subsequent date, price realization is better, or give him an opportunity to export. probably all these issues that we had been talking about can be addressed, and it will open whole new vistas of lending for the banks, and banks probably will be the best beneficiary out of the whole exercise, because currently what they have been doing only small value lending, traditional lending. The risk of crop failure is there, and when the remuneration is lower, profitability is lower, the risk of repayment is there, the credit costs go up. The moment you give large value lending to players who are able to pass on the benefits of these fruits to the farmer, everybody along the value chain is going to be benefited. So my view, it's a yes from me, and we should actually go. It's very sad that the country is witnessing this kind of resistance. In fact, if I meet 10 people during the day, I talk to each of them, anybody who is into agriculture in some little way, how these laws are going to benefit the community, and they should spread the message and the word, and trying to take away the resistance from the people or the vested interests who are trying to bring it in.
Thank you, ma'am. On that, meaning it's a positive from every point of view. Mr. Shaji, the question, I would just elaborate it a bit. Do you see banks now coming in, say, okay, we are now going to finance private sector for setting up market infrastructure, platforms, maybe warehouses, maybe cold chain, logistics, quality assay mechanisms, or say we are now going to design products for financing, say again purchase contracts issued in contract forming. Do you see that banks are going to come in a larger way? And what do you think might be the kind of preparations they may need?
So there's no doubt that these legislations are path-breaking, and it will be positive. That is all. Everything is there. But the problem now is that we have to now ring-fence the risks associated. No, there is a pre-production risk. That is the crop production risk is there, where weather insurance and such other things are not yet stabilized. That is one point. Second, this post-production risk, which the new laws are trying to address. That I think we have to now develop a good commodity market. Now, as of now, the minimum support price, which is acting as the implied put option, because whatever you produce at that rate, there's an insurance to the farmer right now. But then it is not it is not a stable put option, because it is not a market linked one. So we need to go towards a market determined mechanism. For that, the commodity markets, of course, now around 7 commodities, agri commodities, there are commodity futures and options are there. But then we need to develop volumes in that. We need to create a lot of liquidity there. For that, I think there is an understanding now that there will be some sort of consolidation in the stock exchanges as well. And then there is a credit guarantee. So when banks are assured of reasonable security for their loans, banks will be lending. But I doubt whether banks are right now, mostly public sector banks, whether they are thinking in those directions. I doubt. So what we are doing is that we are trying to create some demonstrative effect in converting these cooperative societies as multi-service centers. So what we are trying to do is that we are under the Agri Infra Fund. What we are giving loan to PACs, that is by primary agricultural credit societies, at 4% rate of interest, which with the interest subvention, it will be costing at only 1%. So around 15,000 crores we have set apart for that. So that will create some infrastructure, because one of the requirements for a robust commodity market is to have proper post-harvest management infrastructure. So that is what we are trying to set up. And then once that is there, we are now thinking of also subsidizing. There's the option premiums in the commodity markets, whether we can do that. Whatever around what you assessed is that for every contract around 500 rupees of premium is coming. So some sort of subsidization there to attract, not that subsidy should destroy, but then to attract more of participants into this field, mostly through FPO marketing techniques. So now this innovation which has to happen in public sector banks. One more thing is there, the public sector bank with one size fit all approach will not serve the purpose. What they have to do is that they have to partner with a lot of NBFCs, who knows how to handle these things. And then as a co-lending opportunity or a co-development opportunity, they should come out. And then the states are also because agriculture being a state subject as well, states also should be actively partnering. I think in this direction, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana are leading, because what they are trying to do is that they are actually coming out with the crop planning, because of the excess land now is coming under cropped area due to a lot of irrigation projects which are coming up. They are now going in a structured manner. We are also guiding them so that there will not be any glut. What actually is happening now is that earlier we used to have food insecurity. Now we are dealing with food surplus. But then food surplus is very much skewed towards cereal crops, which has to be diversified. Now, people have to move away from cereal crops to other oilseeds and such other crops, where country is now depending on import. So that's some sort of an import substitution, which our Prime Minister has told about Atmanirbhar. So we have to now go forward to those crops where import substitution can happen. Thereby we can save.
Hello.
Sir, can I add one point, sir? I'm Krishna Rao from State Bank.
I think, did we lose Mr. Shaji's link? Yeah, Mr. Krishna. Yeah.
I think I lost in between. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are audible, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, I don't know where I lost connection. What I was telling is that there should be some sort of innovation from the public sector banks. I lost, and then we
again. I think we have lost him again.
Sir, can I add one point in response to the DMD?
Yeah, please do, Mr. Krishna Rao. When Mr. Shaji checks in, I will ask him to continue later. Yeah.
Sir, in respect of private mandis, in response to the agri laws, 3 laws, yesterday we had a detailed meeting with one of the important constituents about the product and pricing. We have already finalized the product and we have already going for other pricing. They wanted a special pricing for the sourcing and collection. That kind of arrangements we are entering with one of the important players. Yeah. That is the update I am sharing with it. Another one update is actually, agriculture is challenged by with the 3 P's. One is a production risk, 1 P. The second one is a price risk. The third one is a political risk. Actually, in the production risk, what we are suggesting is, instead of cereals, we are encouraging commercial crops, either vegetables, fruits, and other tobacco crops, where we are giving special pricing, special security arrangements. Also, we are reducing them. So indirectly, we are encouraging them to go from a cereal crop to commercial crop. Another area where we are just now we are entering is options. So far we have not done anything options for price risk against the commodity. Now we are with NCDX multi commodity exchange. We are going to enter a options. Yeah. That instrument also we want to this one. So I want to add one is a product customization we are doing in response to the agri laws. Another one is the option also we are trying. Right. The third one is pricing also we are giving to the commercial area. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Krishna Rao. I think I will move to the next question now. I will start with Mr. Jaikumar on this. You see, we have seen quite a bit of subsidies, then some kind of subventions, grants also come in through specified projects, investment, subsidies for setting up warehouses, cold stores, livestock sector, even fisheries sector. We have seen it in the past. Plus these interest subvention kind of things also continue almost for more than 15 years. Almost it is 15 years after interest subvention started. When banks are involved in financing, are they able to adequately price in the kind of risks given the environment where government says farmers require a low rate of interest, farmers expect that they will get loans at a very cheap rate. And at these rates, is it possible to carry on a business where we expect very large volumes of credit to get in? Do you have any thoughts on what might be some structural kind of responses to this, and how do we take this forward? Because you have seen it from an outside bank, from within public sector, and also now in the process of doing a private sector entry. I think this is one piece which we don't openly voice out in terms of financial sector policy, how it nudges or how it pushes banks away. Yeah. Muted, Mr. Jaikumar, you are unmuted.
I'm sorry. What I said was it would all depend upon how we are able to build in scale and improve productivity. I'll give you a few examples of them and as some kind of a marker. Long time back in 2016 or something, the bank I was working with bought a bank in Korea. So I had gone with them to spend time on the mortgage business of the country. So I asked him, how do you verify income? He said, we don't ask for income. I asked him, how do you verify the property value? He said, we don't ask for property value. I asked him, how do you verify the title? He said, we don't verify title. Then I asked him, how is it possible to give a mortgage loan where you don't ask for income, don't ask for verification, don't ask for title? Would it not be a dangerous thing to do? And the answer to this is like this. In Korea, there is a bureau you ping, you get your salary. There is a bureau you ping, you get the credit score, like we do. There's a bureau you ping, it confirms the title deed, who owns it, etc. The transfer can be made from the bank's desk. You can completely change the registration process. Now think about that system. And that system is so efficient that the cost of processing a loan in Korea is cheaper than the cost of processing a loan in Chennai, where you have to search for the 30 years of title record. You need to engage a lawyer. It takes 90 days, and at every stage you're waiting. You see, the answer to all of these questions comes back to the principal thing. Productivity improvement has to be substantially done across board. That, I think, would help. And the second thing I would say is the farmer's income increases. They see the value of the credit facility being provided to them. They see the value of maintaining the banking relationship in proper shape. So I think we go back to the same thing. How do we improve productivity and how do we improve the placement of the output? If people are earning well and they can afford repayment, they will repay fundamentally. There will be some who won't, but most will. So I see this more as how do we build the scale. One last example, collection. We go to a village. This particular parcel of land is financed by SBI. The next parcel of land is financed by Bank of Baroda. The third parcel of bank is financed by Indian Bank. Now look at the collection cost. Each one of them is coming to that little portion of land, collecting the money and moving. Some of these things can be integrated into a single platform that can help in lowering productivity. Finally, the farm law itself. We now created we have multiple platforms. We have ENAM. Now under the farm law, you can sell to anybody. So there is going to be a trade market that is evolving. And then you have the APMC, which each state a different level of liberalization. If you were to integrate this market platform, you'll have better pricing coming out of the whole exercise. So to answer your question, long and short, I think the improvement in productivity, reduction in cost, and the scale factor are critical. If these things can be accomplished, then the pricing would then tend to become competitive in the way it is. So I hope I answered that question. And finally, we need to relook at all of these subsidies. I think we need to move to one universal income so that subsidies don't become perverse in nature and create their own distortion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jaikumar. That's more comprehensive response, which most bankers would like. You try and improve productivity within the bank by having digital processes, access to information in a form that you require. Also, you improve productivity, profitability in agriculture. But on the last point, you said, look, you try and take subsidies away, let them not pollute what the financial sector does. Keep it outside, give it as a universal basic income. So the farmer's livelihood is protected. The financial sector gets on with its job. I think fabulous.
This is one other point. When we talk about digitization, we have to talk about digitization of the real sector along with the financial sector. Right? So land records have to be digitized. A lot of real sector changes have to happen. It is then you get the full benefit of digitization. Otherwise, the bank simply improving the process won't help unless the real world also improves the process. So the financial world and the real world moving in tandem.
Absolutely. Mr. Krishna Rao, now I will turn to you on the same question. I would just like to ask the question that will be more specific on this. So when State Bank is the largest bank in terms of even agricultural finance, it has lots of innovation, which you yourself have listed out in the last 2-3 years. What are all the things that have changed? How is the bank able to price its, what do you call, loan products and price its risks? Because one set of loans have to be given at 5. There is another set which we will have to give more. How do we actually manage this?
Sir, for determining the pricing, we are using the two models. One is up to 50 lakhs, we are using a credit scoring model. The above 50 lakhs, we are using a CRA model, credit risk model. These two models we are using for financing high value investment credit. Actually, investment credit, if you see the declining share of investment credit in State Bank of India also for the last 3 years. For that, we are introducing this now. Instead of linking to MCLR, that is marginal cost of funds based lending, now we are linking to EBLR, that is external benchmark lending rate. Thereby, suppose take for example, one example I will tell. Yesterday we have linked to MCLR, 1 year MCLR plus 2. 1 year MCLR, State Bank of India is 7 plus 2. Now it is 9%. Now we have decided all term loans should be linked to only EBLR. Our EBLR is 2.65 plus 4. That is our repo rate. So 6.65 plus 2, 8.65. So the pricing is linked. One is the linking of the base rate, that is EBLR. We have moved to the EBLR where they will get a 30 to 35 BPS benefit to the farmer. The second one is if they are able to get a good score, we are able to give a good loan limit and the price also. In fact, you will be surprised if they have very good CRA. We are giving a very fine rate, even for a 20 crores, 30 crores also. In fact, I will tell you one example of Agri Infrastructure Fund. Agri Infrastructure Fund and Agri Animal Husbandry Fund. First time we have introduced up to 100 crores. Thanks to the NABARD, up to 100 crores rate of interest is only 8.65, irrespective of this one. Because of this inbuilt risks of credit guarantee is providing, as long as credit guarantee is provided, as long as the risk is taken care of, we are able to translate the benefit of pricing to the common man, especially farmer who are investing in the investment credit.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, for the detailed answer from the State Bank side. I will now move to the next question. Now we are running out of time. We have, I think, as allowed by Kirti, another about 8 or 9 minutes. This question, I'm going to combine the last two questions basically. One is, we have discussed quite a bit about the need for bringing in new types of lending, innovating, moving away from KCC for certain reasons and all that. I only wanted to ask, what do you think about the feasibility that banks will shift entirely over to value chain based lending? Some of you already talked about the ecosystem requirements in terms of data, digitization of the real sector, the farms and their outputs and farmer holdings and all other things. So looking to how things are happening on the ground, digitization of land records and the credit registries that are coming up now, do you think banks will be in a position to almost fully, if not fully, shift to value chain based lending? And also the last round question, what are those 3 important policy changes you would like to see to make agricultural finance much more vibrant? I start with Mr. Shaji on this.
Yeah. So regarding this value chain lending, I think it is high time that banks should move towards that, because now collateral based or person based lending should no longer happen. It should be transaction based lending which should happen. So if you finance a higher up the value chain, that money should flow to the producer, that is the farmer. That also we should do it. For that to happen, there should be some infrastructure, marketing infrastructure, such other things need to be there. Plus, of course, the de-risking. The post-harvest de-risking has to happen. Once that assurance is given or that is there, then I think banks, but then banks on their own way, they can do it by as I said earlier, by partnering with NBFCs. So NBFCs I've seen, earlier one question was asked whether rate of interest. Actually, it's I don't think it is a rate which matters. It is the timeliness and adequateness of the credit. That too for a small and marginal farmer who is not getting, and now he's going to alternate sources where the rates are very high. So studies have proved that once that credit is given at the right time at the adequate quantities, his productivity will increase. So that will take care of the cost. Even if he has to pay a little higher cost. NBFCs are lending at say 15 to 16%. In our own case, when FPO financing is not happening, when our subsidiary is lending at 13%, still demand is very huge. Whereas if a bank is trying to lend, if say a bank like State Bank of India, they may price it at around 8%. But then we are able to push the credit at 13%, that too at a profitable manner. So it is not the rate which matters, but the timeliness and the adequateness of the credit which matters. But of course, rate should be at a reasonable cost. So now coming back to this value chain financing, we have taken some certain steps like geotagging of warehouse to build up the database. And one more thing which we are trying to push is the agri stack, where we are trying to capture all the rural transactions which are happening, where we will build a data stack, just like the India stack, which is there. Of course, on PM Kisan database, we are in talks with government. So once that happens, I think that should be a facilitator. We'll develop a platform where any player come with API integration, he can do some innovation and then demonstrate to banks that value chain financing can happen in all the stages of value chain. But then one more thing here, it is that the APMCs who are now just in a part of supply chain, they have to be rebranded as a partner to the value chain. They should just they should not do the transaction of procuring and giving to FCI. Instead of that, they should now be part of supply chain. That will be a welcome step as a result of this legislation which is coming. So now on the policy part, what I feel is that we should now facilitate NBFCs to access low cost credit. Maybe, as I said earlier, that PSLC lending, they should be able to issue certificates, PSLCs, to those banks which are deficient in priority sector credit. That will give a lot of impetus to the rural lending, where the NBFCs is still, they are gaining actually the market share. Almost 10% of the agri market share is with the NBFCs. Now, if we reduce their cost of funds, of course, we have given that SLF as a COVID response with a nudge from RBI and the government. They have provided some low cost funds, which we are trying to pass on to small value NBFCs. But still, their cost of funds need to be reduced. They are the persons who are now will provide effective last mile connectivity. So we need to have a proper legislation on that. And then state governments should come with an active participation and FPO. They should now try to consolidate land holdings as a group, maybe under a cooperative structure or maybe as a company, whatever it is. But then the choice of the institution should be left to the state government. But there should be some mandated type of thing for collectivization of small and marginal farmers. Then this credit guarantee scheme, as you said, we have to de-risk lending. So as a small step under AIF, some credit guarantee is now given. Under Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund, NABARD has set up a subsidiary, and through that we will be giving the credit guarantee. Now we are trying to explore the possibilities of extending that credit guarantee to other types of loans as well. So we are in talks with the government. So more hopefully, if that happens, then on our own way, we also will, from our own funds, we'll provide the corpus partially. But then normally credit guarantee should be given by sovereign. That is what we because it's a default guarantee which is giving. But then with proper checks and balances, I think we can structure a good credit guarantee product at the initial stages, because these are all in the fledgling stage where we are trying to liberalize the farm sector. So we need to provide some incentives for the players to come in, to provide them reasonable safety for their funds lent. So on those matters, we have to move forward. I'm sure in the days to come, it is the days for agriculture sector, and that too the agri export. That is what the new agri export policy has come. Even NABARD is now has tied up with APIDA for capacity building in agri export area. So because a lot of phytosanitary measures, a lot of other legislative measures are there, a lot of educative activities have to happen. So we will be taking lead on that. That's what for the time being I am.
Thank you, Mr. Shaji. Mr. Krishna Rao, would you like to come in on this specific thing? How feasible it is that, say, State Bank will shift over to value chains?
Sir, I can say we are the leaders in value chain, especially in the entire 7 states of Northeast. We have already rolled out a value chain. To start with Tripura, we have entered a recently value chain financing for fisheries. From input to output. Actually, what is happening in the present context, 1/3 of the consumer price only producer is getting. Now, under value chain, we are aiming at to minimum 60% of the consumer price, the producer will get it. We are going to finance both agri and SME under entire value chain under Mudra model, so that all small and marginal farmers are going to be get benefited. And we are taking the help of the FPOs also in a big way. FPOs and tie up with companies. In fact, we have recently entered with NGOs sponsored by Tata. That NGOs also we have entered with them for sourcing the application and helping for the stabilization and standardization of agri value chain financing specific areas. Each state we have taken one value chain. Kiwi we have taken in one state, and another one is fishery, another one is piggery. Likewise,
Mr. Krishna, I see that State Bank
in one area.
Mr. Krishna Rao, I see that State Bank is really progressing on value chain financing. It's very good to know that. Would you also like to very briefly indicate whether there are policy changes that you are looking at? Any 3 of them? Because now we have run out of time. We have about a minute left. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Policy changes, if you can bullet list it.
Only policy change in the issued contract farming, protection to the farmers, sir.
Okay. That is the one policy change you are looking forward to.
Yes.
Yeah. And Ms. Manju Agarwal, can I now come to you for a very quick comment on, is it possible that banks will shift to value chain finance significantly, and 3 policy changes in terms of priority that you are looking at? Can you bulletize that?
Yes, banks would love to shift to value chain financing, and the way forward could be collaboration with NBFC that Mr. Shaji spoke about. Lending through FPU model. FPU can bring the same value as GLG model and brought into microfinance. And government subsidy, the funds which are getting spent through subsidy model should actually get moved to crop insurance or investment into infrastructure, because which will improve the credit absorption capacity of the farmer. FPOs can actually aggregate small land holdings with the latest technology, export extension services, and bring the marketing concept to the small and marginal farmer. So FPO lending is the way forward. And the agriculture reforms that I would support are the 3 reforms which government has brought in.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Jaykumar, I am going to give you the last word on this. Yes.
No, I think the supply chain finance program today in most or value chain is for most part focused on the first derivative. That is the relationship between the first point of financing and the second node. We need to build it sequentially all the way down to the end point, and that would require development of both technology, artificial intelligence, and some form of blockchain technology. So if you were to take a simple thing of a tomato ketchup manufacturer, he tends to produce his goods at one point of time when the demand for ketchup is kind of every day the same. The ability of the financial system, therefore, to finance each of the elements, each of the players in the system, based on the quantity of goods they need to hold, and making sure the finance of the chain is complete, requires a certain amount of investment in technology, in mathematical modeling, and surveillance processes. So this has to precede before large-scale adoption of a value chain. Otherwise, value chain will remain a first derivative financing. That's broadly what I would say. As far as laws are concerned, sir, there are many of them today. The issue in India is not the lack of law. The issue in India has always been the implementation of law. We have never been able to enforce a single mortgage in an agricultural land is a case in point. So I think if you had to just respect Contract Act and honor Contract Act, I think we would go a long way in terms of the way forward. And I think we are failing in the first step. You can create another 20 more acts. People can violate. Nothing will happen. Today, you see how NCLT is. It's not producing any result. So we are sitting over here passing more laws and hoping that will solve the problem. It is not. It's implementation that matters.
Thank you, Mr. Jaykumar. I think, and thank you all the panelists. It has been a highly engaging discussion, full of insight and quite a number of diverse points of view, but they are converging on the theme of, it is possible to do better agricultural finance. Banks are already moving quite a bit. Value chain financing is possible. Only the ecosystem issues, whether it is data availability, digitization, simplification of processes. So these we need to actually look into. And some of the key points that came was, okay, we should facilitate maybe NBFCs and other non-banks to participate much more effectively in agriculture, try and reduce their cost of entry, cost of operations, cost of funds, so that they can do the last mile. Partnerships are very much required to bring AgTechs in and also to bring last mile connectivity for very highly distributed holdings of small farms. And the structures like guarantee funds and credit registries and information networks from where banks can actually take data without having to do detailed KYCs. And contract farming, it can actually boost things. And let us look at government subsidies in a very different way and focus on FPOs. And I think the agricultural reforms which focus on markets, which bring in more of private sector, which provide solutions to farmers that don't depend on the public exchequer, they may be really a good way forward when we are commercializing. I should only say here, when you put a group of bankers to discuss agricultural finance, normally the discussion will turn to the financial sector, the risk, the NPA, the difficulty of dealing. But in the panel, we had a very pleasant, different kind of conversation. How you deal with the real sector issues so that agricultural finance can maximize its delivery and improve its offering. So thank you all. Thank you, the entire set of audience. Thank you for your participation. And over to you, Kirti, now.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan, for directing this panel so very well and moderating it with very pointed questions. Thank you, panelists, for a great learning and participatory session. We'll reconvene after a short while for the next session titled Potential of Agri-Fintech in Improving Affordable Access to Finance for Farmers. Thank you, everyone.